Hi guys, how you doing? It's Orlando City UK here, and this is an off-the-cuff chat. It's a chat I wasn't expecting to have. Transfer deadline day in England, and we've got a transfer, one that nobody saw coming. I'm here with Dan Berridge, the English Lion. You'll know him as on Twitter to discuss it. It's Daryl Dike to Barnsley. Now, who would have ever said that transfer was going to materialise today? But that's what's happened in the last few hours. And he'll be joining Barnsley on loan in the EFL Championship on loan until the end of May, with Orlando City having a conditional right of recall. Now, first and foremost, Dan, your reaction. It's only broke a couple of hours ago. What are you making of this?
It's insane, really. I didn't expect the first major bit of transfer news. I know obviously we signed Brandon Austin and there's been the draft and one or two other bits, but I didn't expect the first major transfer news of this off-season to involve A, Daryl Dike, and B, Barnsley. No disrespect to anybody that's a Barnsley fan, but it's just not a matchup you would imagine when you look, especially when you look at all the clubs in the Championship. You know, likes of Sheffield Wednesday, Nottingham Forest, Derby County. Like, you've got big clubs in there. So Barnsley is quite random, I would say, but I think it's a good fit. I obviously know the Championship fairly well. My team have been in it for quite a while. Barnsley are a very direct team. They're not the sort of archetypal long ball team by any stretch of the imagination. We just played them at the weekend, so I feel like I can speak with a little bit of knowledge of their style of play. They get the ball forward quickly and they do create chances. So I genuinely do believe with his strength, his finishing ability, and his awareness in the box, I think he'll score goals in the Championship.
Yeah, I mean, it is.
But in terms of,
go on.
I was going to say, in terms of like the furore, I think is the best word I can think of on like Orlando City Twitter right now. This is a good deal, and you know we'll speak about this later on, I'm sure. But obviously, there's a $20 million, well, reportedly a $20 million buyout put in place by the club. I see that as an insurance policy because, and if anyone reads the article that I just tweeted out, you'll see without promotion to the Premier League, there's no way that, in my mind, the Barnsley can afford that.
Yeah.
So, and if he does, and if the miracle does happen and they go up and he scores a load of goals, you're getting $20 million for a second-year rookie. Yeah. It's not bad, is it?
He made the headline points there. I think, you know, Lewis Moosey in the front office, they've done their due diligence on this one, but just to recap a little, I mean, it genuinely is like someone's played real life FIFA or Football Manager today. I mean, it's just a transfer you just never saw coming. But now it has happened, of course. You can obviously dig a little deeper, go into the past couple of weeks, and you see the reason why we pulled Derek Dodson out of the draft when everyone was saying, look, you know, Orlando was stacked at striker. Do they need another reinforcement? You know, obviously, with hindsight now, Daryl Dike's move to Europe, in this case, Barnsley, was probably in the works. But yeah, like I said, that's why I wanted to get you on tonight, Dan. Dan, if you don't know, is a massive Nottingham Forest fan. So he has experience of playing Barnsley in the last couple of seasons. Their playing style, I want to, you've touched on it briefly. I want to touch on that first. What is Forest's result? Have you played them twice already this season or just once against Barnsley?
Yes, we've actually played them 3 times. The first time was in the League Cup in the opening weekend of the season, because they started the League Cup before the league due to the pandemic. We lost 1-0. We drew 0-0 at the weekend, and I can't off the top of my head remember what the away result was in the league. I think we lost 2-0.
Yeah.
And then also going back to last season, obviously we collapsed at the end of the season and missed the playoffs on goal difference on the last day. And it was actually Barnsley in the penultimate game, 1-0 defeat at Oakwell, that kind of set that into motion.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of sick of the sight of Barnsley, to be honest. I'm kind of glad we don't have to play them again with DK.
Yeah. More likeable slightly, right? right now.
Yeah. But yeah, in terms of their playing style, from what I've seen of them, and I've kind of had a little perusal over a couple of their recent fixtures, just as the news broke. They're quite a direct team, as I alluded to earlier. They don't necessarily lump long balls into the box, but they get the ball out wide, and they're always looking to make things happen. They've scored a decent amount of goals. If you look at the Championship table right now, Norwich City are leading the way, and they've scored 35 goals, I believe.
Yeah.
And Barnsley have 29. But they've got an over-reliance on Macaulay Woodrow.
Yeah.
Who's got 11, I think I read. And then the next highest scorer is Mowat on 4. So I can see why they've signed Dike, because they obviously need to alleviate that pressure on Woodrow. But yeah, they
Championship table now, and you're absolutely right. Norwich leading the way. Barnsley in 12th right now, 36 points, and they're around. They're just Bournemouth in 6th on 42. So, you know, the playoff places are within reach. Obviously, you know, like that's what Orlando City fans, I suppose, with this deal were very slightly fearful of, that Barnsley will go on an incredible run and get promoted to the Premier League to then have those funds. It's very, very unlikely, of course, but that's one of the headline points in this deal today. So there is a option to buy, and if I've understood correctly, correct me if I'm wrong, it's the 80% of it's DK's rights, isn't it? 80% of his rights, $20 million, right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
So,
and that's a phenomenal amount of money.
Yeah, it really is. I think one of my followers just tweeted. I mean, if that went through, which we all hope it doesn't, I mean, that's right up there with the top transfers out of the league, Miguel Almiron, etc.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Almiron's the one that jumps to mind. I think he was north of $20 million, wasn't he?
Yeah.
And he'd been in the league a little while longer. And, you know, if you look at it sort of in the context of purely his statistics, you're talking about a player that's in his second season in the league. His rookie season, he scored 8 goals. So if you take it in that context, $20 million potentially, it's not a done deal by any stretch of the imagination, but $20 million for an 8-goal striker, albeit in a shortened season, it's good business, isn't it?
I mean, it's a hands-off fee, isn't it? I mean, when I digested the news a couple of hours ago, straight away, without thinking about when the league MLS is going to start, when it might not start, etc. I was disappointed to see it, you know, and that is selfish, because we all know the EFL Championship is one of the best. Well, it is the best second-tier league around the world. I'm an Arsenal fan, but I've always loved watching it. Of course, it's a step up for DK. In reality, as I digested the news, you know, at most he's going to miss a month of the 2021 MLS season. It's not the end of the world. He gets an amazing experience in the second tier. Jordan Morris moved to Swansea earlier in the window and loaned from Seattle. I know this deal's a little different. But as you know, I digested it, you know, like, it's a brilliant move for the guy himself, isn't it? I mean, we're talking under 24 hours after he made his international debut for the US. So, I mean, the guy is living the dream right now, isn't he?
Yeah, definitely. Well, I think the Championship will suit him as well. A lot of questions are often asked when players are bought from outside of the Championship, how they can cope with the unique nature of it. Mainly in terms of the scheduling, to be honest, because it's sort of Saturday, Wednesday most of the time, and especially during this pandemic, it's just I know Forest's fixture list has been pretty insane. So, like, in a physical sense, I think he'll cope with it really well. It's a really physical league. It's a really fast-paced league. I think it suits him down to the ground, to be honest. And if he goes there and scores 5 or 6 goals, and they have a decent run towards the end of the season, because they haven't been on a brilliant run just lately. I think they're winless in the last 5. But if he does well there, gains a load of confidence, hits the ground running with MLS because he'll be match fit, it can only be a good thing for us. in terms of like that first month, because I know people are worried he'll be missing for that first month, but I'm pretty happy with like what we've got in terms of strikers. I have been for the whole off season, and that was before Dodson came in.
Yeah.
I'm thinking of the likes of Benji Michel. I'm a big fan of his. Tesha Akindele, you know, you can put Chris Mueller there if you're really struggling. There are options, aren't there?
Yeah, you make good points, and like I say, DK, you know, he would have been the starter. Where, I mean, a lot's happened since then, but you know, whereas at the start of last season, before DK was even discovered by Dwyer was the first name on the team sheet. We all had DK, you know, penciled in as the 9 for this season. He won't be there for the start, but you know, it's one of those, isn't it, where like Muzi, Ricardo Moreira, you know, the front office have made better moves. You know, like this is a different Orlando City now. Who's to say Dodson can't hit the ground running?
Yeah.
You know, who's to say Matthias Ayas, who pretty much is still a new signing? You know, he's scored 1 goal, we've barely seen him. So I don't think we're too short up there. Obviously, you know, we're still all romanticising the fact of DK's rookie season. You know, the fact he's just made his US debut. It's hard to let him go. You know, I think you do feel very like fatherly with him because he's such a young guy, even though he doesn't look it. But you know, I think we'll be okay without him. The Lewis Moosey quote says it all. Just going to read it out for the listeners. So Lewis Moosey said, "We believe this opportunity with Barnsley will present another step in his career, to not only developing in a new football environment, but to challenge himself in a new country, and we're excited for him to bring those learnings back to us here in Orlando." So, you know, we've spoke about it already, but we completely 100% envisage him coming back in May. Barnsley's season ends against Norwich City on May 8th. So they envisage him coming back into camp after that. Now, just reading that quote, the thing that stood out to me, and again, you've already said it as a Forest fan, I'm just saying it as someone from Britain who loves the city beautiful. I mean, that is some culture shock, isn't it? Orlando to Barnsley in South Yorkshire. I mean, it's going to be a wild ride for DK.
Yeah.
Isn't it? You know?
He'll learn a lot from like a personal aspect as well, like adapting to a different environment. To anyone who's not familiar with the town of Barnsley, and again, please, I do not mean any disrespect, but it's a very small town. It couldn't be any more different to Orlando in terms of a living environment, especially during a pandemic. So he's going to learn a lot about himself from a personal level. And I'm a big believer in that sort of developing a player in terms of his on the field qualities. Even if he goes there and has a horrible time, doesn't score a goal and plays really badly, it's not necessarily such a negative thing, because you can do a lot of sort of self-reflection, self-learning, and he'll learn from players. They've got players there that have played all over Europe, and you know, they've got players that have played in the Premier League, thinking players like Herbie Kane, who they signed from Liverpool. He'll learn things, and I have 100% faith that he'll do well. Genuinely, I think Barnsley are getting a top player. But yeah, it's going to be quite a culture shock. And I've been to Barnsley, so I can speak from experience. Oakwell which is Barnsley's home stadium, for anyone that doesn't know, is quite different to exploring.
Yeah, very. I mean,
some of the grounds you see in MLS.
Yeah, I mean, like Dan, you know, I've been through Barnsley before. I used to live in Leeds, not too far away in Yorkshire, of course. And you know, Oakwell is a pretty neat stadium. You know, Barnsley have been a Premier League team in the past for some of our American followers. And yeah, I mean, it's funny, isn't it? Because DK is not the only like lion that has been there. Do you remember Brett Shea was at Barnsley way ago?
Yeah.
So you know, like it will be a culture shock for him, but what a great learning experience as well. Now I'm just flicking through Twitter, and it's been funny this evening. Didn't envisage it at all, but you know, I'm sure you're the same. We've had fans, you know, following us and engaging with our stuff. They never have before. You know, this is what happens with football. That's the wonderful thing. But we've got one Tykes fan, Nathan Crow. Now he's said, "My US team to my English team." So he's pleased with DK move. he's moved from his MLS team Orlando to his English team. So that's incredible for you, Nathan. He just says it's a shame he won't be in the stadium in Oakwell to watch him. Now, that is the thing, isn't it? I mean, moves like this
Yeah,
happen every day. Like, we're all in MLS UK. We all love when talent
yeah,
comes from the States, from Canada, over into Europe, and it translates. You know, Alphonso Davies, Almiron, etc., etc. It is a very proud moment to see one of our boys, especially, get the move over here. But again,
yeah,
bittersweet, you know, like because you know we wanted him to be lining up for us. But I think overall, I think when fans really do look at this, I think it is more positive than negative. You know, I think that's what we want to do with this
yeah,
video. We don't panic, Orlando fans, is basically what we're saying. We
yeah.
should see him suit up for us again. You know, this is purely just in the moment, and it has a lot to do with the collective bargaining agreement as well, right?
Yeah, yeah, because I mean, it's quite easy to forget that there's no guarantees that the MLS season will start in April,
Yeah,
as they've scheduled for the opening weekend. My personal belief, and I'm not in the know or anything about the CBA, but I think it will. I don't think the MLS can afford there to be a lockout, and it'll be the first lockout in the league's history, I believe.
yeah,
But it's great to see so many players heading over to Europe now. And I know obviously you want to keep the best talent in the league, but it improves the standing, the global standing of the league. I mean, we've seen Reynolds leave
yeah,
for Roma today, another transfer deadline day deal.
yeah,
You know, it's massive, and we've had Jose Mourinho speaking recently about Premier League clubs scouting the MLS
yeah,
regularly. They recognise it as such a talent pool. Daryl Dike is just sort of the latest example of that.
yeah.
I genuinely believe, like I said earlier, we'll get an improved player when he comes back. I think he'll do well. He'll score a few goals. Thankfully, he won't be scoring them against Nottingham Forest. Um, but yeah, he'll do well, and I think when he comes back in May, he'll be ready to hit the ground running.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think it can only be positive.
What do you say though? I'm with you, but what do you say to the people? Because there's lots of them out there I'm seeing with the reaction this evening. You've already referenced it, the championship. You know, your Saturday, Wednesday, Saturday, Wednesday. So many games. There's so many games in MLS as well. In what is going to be another congested schedule. So he's going to play through to May with Barnsley. What do you say to the people who are going to say he's going to be burnt out? You know, like he's got that experience. He's going to come back to MLS, you know, with its own schedule. Will it be negative? Is there potential for it to be negative?
The only real potential, and this is really probably going to really scare people, so I'm probably going to regret saying this, but obviously if he gets injured,
Yeah.
is the main worry that I would have.
Mm-hmm.
The players could get injured in training, though. Like you kind of can't afford to think that way.
Yeah.
In terms of him being burnt out, I mean, he's young. He's
Mm-hmm.
obviously incredibly athletic. I know. I don't see any reason why he couldn't cope with such a busy schedule. The championship is pretty intense, but because of that intensity, there'll probably be a fair amount of rotation. I can't imagine they'll throw him in and play 90 minutes every game straight away. He'll have a bit of time to bed himself in. And he's also had a long off season already. I think we forget how long the MLS off season is. I mean, I know it's been sort of nearly 2 months. It kind of feels like 2 years, but I think he'll hit the ground running because he'll be match fit. He'll be ready to go, and it won't take him a while to warm up whilst he's with us.
Yeah.
I think that's what I would say to people.
Definitely. Yeah, and I think it's positive overall. I mean, like I say, me and Dan are both, you know, massive enthusiasts of Major League Soccer. The EFL Championship is a massive step up. That's just fact, you know. So you're going to get a player who's playing at a higher level. He's going to be playing in a different country, which more often than not is a good experience. And you know, it teaches you good things as a professional, a young professional at DK.
Yeah.
So I think he's going to reap the benefits of it. Definitely. Now, what else was I going to say? It's just, yes, that's what I was going to say. You hit the nail on the head earlier, and you mentioned him, Benji Michel, right? So there's a player also that he didn't quite get his US debut last night. He was an unused substitute, but there's a guy, again, so much upside. He's a local to Orlando, so we love him anyway. He's played a lot of his Lions career off the sides, off the flanks so far. Is there an opportunity for him now to be the 9? We know he's the best finisher at the club. That's on record a lot. Do you envisage Oscar Pereira playing Michel at the 9 now more than what he would have done?
Yeah, I don't necessarily think he will or he won't, but I hope he does. Mm-hmm. I think I wrote, and I can't remember which article it was, a long time ago. I've spoken quite a bit about how I think the 9 is his best position, and I based that off of the LAFC game last season, which I was lucky enough to be at. He shifted into the centre quite a lot in that game, and he actually scored from a central position. I think he's a great finisher. He's got great movement. My concern with him out wide is his kind of the way he plays on the half turn. Like, so he'll have his back to the defender, and I don't necessarily think it's a strong suit of his in terms of getting the ball with your back to the defender and then turning and beating that guy. Mm-hmm. I think if it's a straight running race, he beats him every time. But in terms of play, and I think that's quite an important attribute for a winger. But it's his finishing ability and his ability to find space at the right time in the box. So I'd like to see him get a chance because I genuinely think he's got a lot to offer.
Yeah.
Especially with the way we like to play with the 4-2-3-1 and kind of working the ball through the middle. And then you've got obviously the likes of Juan bombing on and cutting the ball back. I think there'll be chances for him.
Yeah.
So yeah, I would like to see him. I'm not necessarily sure he will. I think obviously Pereira's a big fan of Tesho. He served him well in the past, and obviously Dodson's come in. So we'll see what happens. But I hope he does get a little bit of a run.
Yeah, absolutely. I think what I want to say as well, like with this move, Dike to Barnsley today, it really is reward his 2020 season. 8 goals, 4 assists across 1,224 minutes. And it's just, when Orlando send these players to the Championship, it just puts us on the map again, like at the end of the day, we're not the biggest club in the world, it puts us on the map again. Like I said this evening, Barnsley fans have kind of been looking at Orlando City UK, Orlando City, and what we've done and where we've been. And honestly, since Oscar Pereira's come to the club, it's just got 4 players in the national team at the moment. It's just putting us on the map. And I think the more we do these kind of things, obviously we had Kyle Larin years ago that was in different circumstances, didn't leave on the best terms, of course. But the more and more we do these things, I think I wrote it earlier this week, younger players will keep seeing Orlando City as a club where they have a real pathway to make it. I mean, we're genuinely talking about a guy here that this time last year had only just been drafted 5th overall, and now he's a fully fledged international. Yeah. Now he's playing in England. I mean, like that's not going to happen every time. But, we've had Kyle Larin out of the draft. We've had Chris Mueller out of the draft. We've had Dike out of the draft. Who's to say? I mean, if I'm Derek Dodson right now, I'm looking at those guys and thinking, wow, like they've done it. I can too. And I'm just thinking, that's the mentality now of the young American or Canadian soccer player. You can go places, especially under someone like Oscar Pereira.
Yeah. And I think another way of looking at it as well is the more players that kind of leave the club and are successful, the more money that comes in from outside of the league, which is only good especially with the single entity approach that we've got. Any club exporting a player for a decent amount of money benefits the whole league.
Yeah.
I'm not saying for 1 minute we should sell Daryl Dike, like obviously not. You want to keep your best players, and we want to, I genuinely think we've got a chance of doing something special this season. But like you said, it's a chance to put us on the map. And then, who's to say further down the line, other big clubs in Europe don't look at our talent and think, right, we'll have them. More money comes in, and it's money you can invest into other areas of the team. Yeah. So it's how you manage it, really. But yeah, I think it can only be positive.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Now,
definitely.
going back to Barnsley themselves, you've noticed that the Tykes, they're overly reliant on Corley Woodrow. He's the one who gets all the goals. Do they play a one up top? Do you know? I mean, we've seen Jordan Morris. He's been on the bench his first couple of games with Swansea. You know, you fully imagine DK, step straight into the starting 11. Ismail will probably, like coax him in gently. But do they play a one up top?
Yes, as far as, well, they did at the weekend. I'm just checking on whoscored.com to make sure that I didn't make that up. But yeah, generally they play a pretty similar formation to a lot of teams these days in terms of the 4-2-3-1 by the looks of it. And you're just looking at the stats from the game at the weekend, there was 20 crosses into the Forest penalty area. So they're obviously a team that like to get the ball wide. And again, we've seen how good Daryl Dike is in the air. That's something that he can really profit from. Just looking at obviously who scored again, they often play three at the back, and then I think it can kind of shift to a 4-2-3-1 and then to a 3-4-3, depending on the landscape of the game, essentially. I'm saying this like I'm a Barnsley expert. If Barnsley fans, if you're watching this, please correct me if I'm wrong. But I'm just kind of going off what information I have. Just interestingly, from a Barnsley perspective, they're due to play Chelsea in a few weeks in the FA Cup.
Yes. And
also the next game, which is a Forest fan, which I find really interesting, is Derby. So I really hope he scores a hat-trick there.
Yeah, absolutely. Good shot with the Chelsea game. I didn't think of that, but you're right. You're absolutely right. What an opportunity for Daryl Dike to play against Chelsea. I mean, he's a 20-year-old American. To be stepping out of Chelsea is something he would have never envisaged, this early on in his career. So what an opportunity that will be. But yeah, like I say, it's just a shame, isn't it, that we are in these times and there won't be fans there. Like he would have learned a lot about the English football fan and how raucous it can be over here. So it's a shame he's not. Experienced, but still be great.
Yeah, it's not likely to happen before the end of the season either, is it?
No, definitely not. Definitely not.
But yeah, they've got an interesting run of fixtures actually. Chelsea, and then they play Brentford, who are a quality team. Bristol City, Stoke, Queen's Park Rangers, Sheffield Wednesday. So yeah, it would definitely be a good experience for him to play against these big teams. I mean, albeit without the fans in the stadiums, but like looking at the Chelsea game in particular, as a young North American, Christian Pulisic could very well be lining up against him. So he's gonna learn a lot. He really is.
Yeah, no, it's absolutely fantastic for him. Obviously, this is still a fresh transfer. Only happened a couple of hours ago. So we saw a brief clip of DK, I'm assuming in his car in Orlando, reacting to the news himself, saying, to the Barnsley fans that, he's happy to be on board. I'm sure we're going to see a lot more videos and a lot more news on this in the coming days. But yeah, Daryl Dike to Barnsley in the EFL Championship on loan until the end of the season, which will be May. The MLS 2021 season scheduled to take place on April 3rd. So likely to miss a month of the MLS season. But yeah, just reacting to the news with Dan today, fellow Orlando City diehard, and yeah, it really is. You will wake up tomorrow and think, "Wow, did that really happen?" It's the kind of transfer you just don't see too often, but one you're seeing a lot more as really Europe wakes up to the talent that is in MLS. And I think the more and more players that come over and succeed, scouts, are cottoning on and thinking, hang on a minute, there is some talent in this league.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah, definitely. I mean, Alphonso Davies is obviously probably the watershed moment, isn't he? I mean, you're talking about one of the best wing backs in the world right now. I think that really opened a lot of people's eyes. And yeah, I think it's going to keep happening. And obviously, we want to keep the best players in the league, but obviously, you need to see the positives of when these players do leave. More money comes into the league, which you can then reinvest and attract even more talent. Because a lot of young South Americans and North Americans are going to continue to see this as a great gateway to Europe, because obviously Europe is the pinnacle, and it probably always will be. But there's no reason why MLS can't, in the coming years, be seen as a even bigger league than what it is. And I think central to that is going to be these players going out of the league and doing well. But yeah, hopefully, obviously, the case of Daryl Dike, he comes back for a little bit, which I think he.
Yeah, we're definitely all hoping that for sure. I mean, he made himself a fan favourite, didn't he? I mean, I just remember literally bulling a china shop. It's an overused cliche, but he wasn't he? Do you remember down at Inter Miami in that first visit to Fort Lauderdale? Yeah. I just remember from that night, Leandro Gonzalez Perez, who's someone that Orlando fans can't stand because he's got the better of us so many times.
Yeah.
He gave him an absolute nightmare that night. He bullied him, didn't he? And from that moment, I thought, hang on, we've got a serious player on our hands.
Yeah. I think that goal, the goal he scored that day was kind of, it epitomised who he is as a player. He just bullied his way through, didn't give up on it. The chance came and he scored it. And obviously, I think it's the Nashville game not long after where he really impressed me just with his finishing and his awareness around the box. Mm-hmm. And his hold-up play is just fantastic, which is kind of one of the main reasons I think he's going to do so well in the Championship, because a lot of teams are very physical. So you do tend to come up against these big bruising centre halves, and you do need to match them physically.
I honestly think a lot of
I worry about Championship defenders.
Yeah, I was just going to say there.
Worry for them.
I was just going to say, I think a lot of the Championship defenders, throughout the league are going to think, damn, who is this guy? And, like if he told them his age, they'd be like, what, really? 20 years old? I mean, the guy is built like an NFL player.
Yeah.
So I think they're going to be in for a rude awakening, with Dike.
Definitely. Yeah, he's quick as well. He's quick for a big guy.
He definitely is.
Yeah, and he doesn't just. I mean, he does bulldoze his way through, but he does it in an intelligent way. He's not. And I don't mean to kind of criticize Dom Dwyer, but obviously he was overly physical at times, and he wasn't smart about it. A lot of the times, whereas Daryl Dike is, and I think as he gets more experience, he'll learn what he can and can't get away with, and kind of how to get the better of his man. And yeah, I think he's got such a high ceiling as a player. Like I don't think I'm overstating it to say he could play in the Premier League in the future. I don't believe that's beyond the realms of possibility.
Absolutely, and
he's that good.
Absolutely, I agree, and we're still in the young history of Orlando City and MLS. Really, I mean, like I said, some Orlando City supporters just don't want us to mention this guy at all, the way he left the club. But Kyle Larin, he jumped ship too early for some. But I mean, you look at his stats in the Turkish Super League for Besiktas at the moment, and he's just going up. So the more and more Orlando send players to Europe, and they do well. Larin's, it's taken him a little while, but it's all good for our club and our name.
Yeah, definitely. And Larin's an interesting one as well, because I don't know I can't remember exactly what year it was, but when he went to Besiktas, he actually went out on loan from Besiktas to a team in Belgium. And I've always been a big fan of loan moves for young players, because it's kind of like a low risk strategy, isn't it? Like you can go to another league, to another team, and then if you do well, you'll get a lot of confidence from it. You'll learn a lot about yourself. You'll learn different ways of playing. And I think that's what Daryl Dike is going to get at Barnsley. He's going to He's going to learn a lot about himself on a personal level, as I've already alluded to, and obviously in terms of his on-the-field play, he's going to play with players that have been playing in a very competitive league for a long time. The Championship is, it's the second division in this country, but it's incredibly high level. I mean, how many teams go up? And I know people will talk about the money involved with the Premier League, but how many teams go up and do well in the Premier League? It used to be the case where teams would go up and come straight back down, and that just doesn't really happen anymore. Yeah. So that kind of speaks to the level that he's going to be playing at. And he's going to, again, no disrespect to Barnsley, but they are not the best team in the Championship. They are a good side, but they're not the best. So he's going to learn a lot about the defensive side of the game, and he's going to learn a lot. He's just going to learn a lot. And I can't speak highly enough of Daryl Dike for you Barnsley fans that might be watching this. You're getting a hell of a player. And Orlando fans, don't worry. He'll come back. And if he doesn't, we're going to be $20 million richer. So it's great insurance policy for the club. You have to give kudos to Louis Musi and all the people involved in that. Because I don't want to point the finger, but under previous administrations, that might not have happened.
Definitely. Well said. Now, we've got a few minutes left with Dan, but just a couple last ones I just want to get in with you now. Would you have, I know we're playing manager here, you guys at Forest have signed Glenn Murray, completely different kind of player, different age bracket altogether today. Would you have wanted DK at Forest? Now, I know he probably wasn't in Chris Hughton's radar at all, but would you have taken DK at Forest over someone like
100%.
Yeah,
100%, because we play that 4-2-3-1. We play one striker up front in his own. It tends to be Lewis Grabban, which, for those of you that know who Lewis Grabban is, has a questionable attitude. He's not he's not pulled up any trees this season. He's been very poor. I think Daryl Dike would have thrived. Well, I say thrived. I would have imagined he'd thrive. We'd probably kill his career. But he would have done well, in all seriousness, because I think we play to his sort of strengths. That one up top, and then you've got the likes of Anthony Knockaert and Joe Lolly, again, for people who know who they are, who can kind of run in around, feed off those second balls and make things happen. So I would have loved Daryl Dike at Forest. I would have paid for his plane ticket if it meant we didn't sign Glenn Murray, if I'm being completely honest.
I hear you. And lastly, Dan, so it's still the off season, of course. DK's been an outgoing. We've had one outgoing, which isn't the draft, which is Brandon Austin from Tottenham on loan. Where do we need to strengthen next? Now, I know what you're going to say, but tell me anyway.
I think obviously left back is an area of quite dire need. Moutinho is going to be out for a while. Obviously, Kamal Miller left. So left back and the number 10, I think, are the absolute, must-haves. I think everywhere else we're doing pretty well. I would like to see another winger, but definitely the 10 and the left back slot for me.
I think those are the gaps in the team. I mean, obviously Mauricio's there in the 10, but he's no spring chicken either. I mean, I suppose you've got Andres Pereira, who can play anywhere, seemingly in the midfield, to potentially step up. But I agree with you, left back, number 10, it would be good to see some depth there. And in Ayas and Alvarado, we've got two, signings from midway through last season who are still relatively new signings, haven't really been on show too often. So, we have options. And like you, I'm counting down the days to April 3rd. I just cannot wait for the season to start. It's still
I can't wait.
Away, but bring it on. Bring it on.
Yeah, it kind of feels like we normally head in with optimism that usually gets dashed pretty quickly. But there's a genuine feeling that won't happen this year. There's no reason we can't win silverware for me. Yeah, I'm not saying we're going to, but
I agree. When you interviewed me earlier in the week, that was one of your questions. What is Orlando City's aspiration for 2021? why not win it all? Honestly, I mean, we saw, Oscar put us on the map last season. It started at MLS's back, and we sustained it throughout the rest of the season. I think those experiences will put us in good stead this time round. I really do. Obviously there's so many teams in MLS. To win it all, it would take a monumental effort, but I'm confident we can make playoffs, and I'm confident we can go deeper. So that should be the ambition. But we're counting down the days. I want to say thanks to Dan tonight for joining us on short notice.
Thanks for having me.
It's a surprise to me, to you, to everyone. Daryl Dike joining Barnsley, but we look forward to seeing him play in the Championship for the Tykes. And we wish him all the best here at Orlando City, UK. So thanks, Dan, for joining us, mate. And vamos Orlando.
Thanks for having me.
You're welcome.
See you later.